Hello and welcome to the weekly gaming news show. I'm your host Sony, and this week we're covering State of Decay 2 releasing a beta for the game, second generation of Ryzen CPUs coming very soon, but first we get to talk about a lawsuit about RAM prices. Now RAM prices have been at an all-time high within the past 5 years, and that's because of a few manufacturing decisions by the suits over at Samsung, Hynix and Micron, which all three of them actually own quite a large significant part of the memory chip market within the world. And there are a few more companies that specifically make memory chips for things like RAM, system memory, things like that. But these guys are the biggest. In fact, they actually hold around 96% of the DRAM market share. The other 4% is actually people who are building gaming rigs or personal computers, things like that. The rest of that market actually is for servers, phones, server computers, things like that. So it kind of puts into perspective how much of the gaming market actually matters within the RAM industry. And the reason why they were able to gain such a huge percentage in market share is because of how they decided to limit the RAM available in the market back in 2016. Essentially, what they agreed on doing is they decided they're going to halt manufacturing for a bit. Then they just keep pumping a certain amount of RAM chips or DRAM chips in like waves and stages, to make sure that the amount of RAM that's on the market right now could be sold at a much higher price than it should be, or because there's so little actually being made. It's actually very similar to what Nvidia did with their graphics cards. Graphics cards are also very hard to get at a decent price these days because they decided they're going to limit how much they're going to make. But with RAM, it's a bigger problem because 2 sticks of 4GB of RAM back in 2015 or 2016 was around 50 to 60 pounds at the most, and about 80 to 100 for DDR4 RAM. Now that same RAM can go up to 150, 200, sometimes even 300 pounds for the same 2 sticks of 4GB of RAM. And as somebody who loves building PCs and loves the PC market, I've seen how this is damaged and, if anything, slowed down anybody actually building PCs, because RAM prices right now are skyrocketing. They are ridiculous. And this lawsuit is actually trying to essentially erode that, trying to say we need more RAM chips on the market because these prices are far too high for anybody to continue feeding the industry. Now it raises the question, is VRAM going to be affected, since this is actually about DRAM? And no, VRAM is handled by a bunch of different companies, and from what we know, they're fine. They've not decided to hold back on how many chips they're making or how many are going to be on the market at a fixed price. But from what I've read from many different sources, these are only allegations. They've not been proven, so things can change. But if this is to be true, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen it. I think back in 2000 or 2001, a bunch of companies essentially did the same thing. They tried to hold back how many RAM chips are actually on the market so they can sell them at a much higher price. Moving swiftly along, we now get into the State of Decay 2 beta. Now, this is a technical beta, which means they're essentially putting this beta out to gather information about PCs, different PCs, how those PCs run and handle the game. So they might be able to make some optimization tweaks just before the game launches, so they don't get a bunch of complaints that, oh, the game's unoptimized, the game doesn't run well on my system, and it's a high-end one. It's essentially to make sure that the game works. And I think a lot more games need to employ this. I think it's very smart and very productive of just a way to say we actually genuinely care about the PC industry and the PC market, so we're doing this to make sure that you guys get what you expect, a game. Now, they have limited spots for the copies. You can sign up on their website. I'll link that in the description below. The only thing you're really obligated to do while you're signing up is you have to do a server, and then you'll be entered into see if you can get a code. You also have to provide a small little document on your PC specs, and that's it. It'll take you through absolutely everything you need to know regarding what I've just mentioned on the website. So don't worry, it's not something you have to like dig up or like write out yourself. It's very straightforward and simple things. And I'm very excited to see if I can get into the technical beta, and two, to see how this game runs, especially on a system like mine. I'm getting closer and closer to upgrading, but I'm very curious to see how it runs on a low-end PC like mine. Speaking about upgrading very soon, there's been a leak about AMD's second generation of Threadripper CPUs. Now, as we know, the second generation of the Ryzen 1 CPUs for Ryzen 7 and 5 have already been released to the consumer, but where's the love for the enthusiast? Where's Threadripper Generation 2? Well, AMD have actually been working on their second generation of the Threadripper chips, and from what we can expect, we've not seen anything. These are just leaked rumors, but from what we can expect higher clock speeds on single cores and multi-cores, higher clock speeds in general, so you can push well over the 4 megahertz, higher clock speed so you can push over the 4 gigahertz clock speed that they're kind of limited to now. Lower latency with memory, which means that your RAM is also going to be faster, and the communication between the RAM and the Threadripper CPUs are going to be faster. We've already seen that on the first generation of the Threadripper CPUs, but if the second gen can bring that down even lower, I'm very excited to see what can come of that. And essentially general optimization of the platform, like we saw with Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, and things like that. And as somebody who wants to upgrade to a Threadripper CPU, because I use things like Adobe Premiere, Adobe After Effects, Photoshop, I'm going to be using a lot more of the Adobe suite as well in the future. So not only multitasking is a priority for me, but also having a system that won't be slowed down at all also is very important to me. I'm going to be going with at least 32 gigs of RAM, and I will be bumping that up later on to around 64 gigs of RAM. Mostly because After Effects and Premiere Pro love RAM too much, and I wish they'd kinda not. So to see that they're actually making a second generation of the Threadripper CPUs, I'm very excited to see what the performance differences are. All in all, I'm very excited to see what comes of TreadRipper Gen2, and to essentially see where the price lies. That's been it for this week's gaming news show. If you need everything that we talk about is of course linked in the description, especially the login for the State of Decay 2 technical beta sign up. If you want to talk about anything that we mentioned in the video, do so in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one.